Hello and welcome to the new and improved channel. So I have changed the name of the channel from Cheetah Coding to the Flutter Factory. I wanted to change how I actually make the videos for this channel and how I actually teach you guys how to write better Flutter apps. So the new direction that the channel is going to go in is that I want to actually make an entire app, and I will make videos on certain concepts as I build out the app for you guys. So the app will represent the Flutter Factory brand, and it'll have all the videos inside of it along with other tutorials. So first I have a very bare bones Flutter app here. You can see here that all we have in the My App is a theme and a home widget. So the home widget is very simple, just an app bar with the title of the Flutter Factory and a centered hello world text widget here. So if you're new to Flutter, then the scaffold holds a app bar and a body widget. So for the app bar here, we just have a very default blue app bar here. But now let's make this look a lot more interesting. So let's go to the app bar, and we're going to keep the title as, let's make it a home here because we're in the home screen. So home. And then I'm going to change the background color. So let's change the background color. And I want the color to be a very dark black, but not all the way black. So I'm going to say colors dot, and let's do black 87. Okay, and we can see how this looks. So in a normal app, you'll probably have some icons here in the app bar, and when the user presses them, something happens, right? First, let's add the Flutter icon, or the Flutter Factory icon on the left side here. So let's go up here, and to do that, this is a leading widget. You see leading, it's displayed before the toolbar's title. Okay. And before the video, I put a logo PNG here in the app. So we have logo.png, and I added it to the pub spec here. So you can see to add a image to the pub spec, uncomment the asset line and add your image location here. Okay, so back in the home screen, let's do image dot, and it's coming from assets. So you can choose assets or files, but I'm going to say asset, and then you just put the path of the actual asset here. So it'll be images slash logo.png. Okay, let's reload. And now you can see it's here. So pretty easy so far. But in a normal app too, you might have some options on the right side too. So let's go down here. And doing that is actually pretty easy too. You would use the action keyword here. So you can put an array of widgets here. So there's no limit to the number of widgets that you can put here, but you want to make sure that you don't put too many, or else your title won't be shown. Okay, so let's do actions. And you could put whatever widget you want here. You could put a text widget, a button, etc. But I'm going to put a icon button here. And I forgot the colon here. So icon button, and the icon button takes in a few different parameters. One of them is an icon. So let's put an icon here. And then this takes the type widget, but you want to put a icon widget here. So this is a icon widget. And then inside of here, this takes in a icon data type. So the icon data type, you would just use the class icons, and then you would say dot, and then you have access to a large amount of built-in icons here for the material theme. Let's use a map here. So a map icon. And you can see here that I have an error. That's because we're missing some required parameters. So we're missing the onPressed here. So let's go down here and say onPressed. So we're going to say print map pressed. And this has to be a function call. So you do an arrow function like so. Let's reload. So we have our map here. And then when we press it, you can see that we have the terminal say map pressed. Okay, and to play around a little bit more with the app bar icons here, we can add some coloring here. So let's go down here, and I'm going to add a highlight color. So let's do highlight color. Let's say colors dot, let's do blue. And down here, I'm going to say splash color. This will be the color that shows when you long press on it, and it'll create like a splash effect. So down here, let's say colors, and I'll probably do purple, I guess. So reload. And now when I press it, I get purple as the splash color. It's pretty fast, but when you long press, it'll be blue because that's more of like a highlight effect that you would see on the web. Okay, so the initial splash is purple, a very, very fast splash. So let's go down here and let's add one more icon button. So let's do, actually, let's not do an icon button. Let's do something different. Let's do a text here. So let's do text, and I will go down here, and to do a text in Flutter 2 is a little bit different than Flutter 1. But to do that, you do style, and then you pass in a certain style. You want to pass in a text style, but I'm going to use a button style actually. So let's do button style, and then foreground color. So this will be the color that shows as the foreground. And unfortunately, this takes in a material color instead of just or a material state property instead of just a normal color class. So to do that, you have to do material state property, I think it is, and then dot all, and then this is of type color, and then you want to pass in the color like this, colors dot, and let's make it blue to match the theme of this brand. And we're getting an error here. I forgot to make this a text button, not a text. So it'll look like a text, but it's actually a button that's a text. So text button. Okay, we're missing a child here. So the child for a text button is usually some text, child, and then you can just pass in a text here, and this will be the actual text that you see. And let's make this text, what's something common that you'll see in an app bar? Maybe like a cart button. So down here we could say cart. Okay, still getting an issue here. And we're missing the on press. So what happens when you press the cart button? So down here, we'll do on pressed, and we'll do a print statement here too. We'll say print cart pressed. Okay, reload. Now you see we have a icon and a text button here. So when I press the cart button, we see cart pressed here. So this is how you create a normal looking app bar in Flutter. Nothing too crazy, nothing too complicated. You might notice that the text actually moved from the center to the left. That just happens by default. It tries to manage the spacing of your app bar automatically. So for example, if I put in a bunch of map icons here, you'll see how that's not a good idea. Too many icons is bad. So let's go down here and reload. And now you can see that our text is gone now. And that's because you put way too many icons in the top bar here. So try to limit the amount of icons that you put in the top bar. 3 might be okay, but I usually leave it at 2 at the most for just a good design flow. Okay, so now some apps have tabs in the tab bar. So let's say that I would have put tabs underneath the app bar here, but I actually want to make it part of the app bar. So there's a few different ways to add tabs to your screen. You can either add it as part of the app bar itself, or you can add it as a separate widget that goes under the app bar. So first, let's add it as part of the app bar itself. Okay. So the app bar has another value here called bottom. Oops, bottom. So you can put a preferred size widget in here. So it says it's typically a tab bar. So they give you a good hint of how to use this bottom keyword here. Okay, so for the bottom, you want to put in a widget called a tab bar. So tab bar. A tab bar takes in a few different things, but the main parameter is a tabs array. So for the tabs array, we can add tab widgets now. So we can add a widget called a tab. For the tab, we're going to add an icon and a text widget. For the icon, that's pretty easy. We can say icon, and then like above or like below here, let's actually just copy and paste this. That'll be a bit faster. And for the icons, for now, I'll just do like a contacts tab. So let's do icons, and I think there's one called people. Okay. And now we want to put the child widget here. So for the child, it's just going to be a text widget. So let's do child. And then we're going to say text. And then we're going to pass in some text here. I'm going to say contacts. Okay, and we can see how this looks. Let's put a comma here. And We'll come back to this in a second, but let's put a second tab here. And for this tab, I want it to be some settings. So I'm going to say dot settings. Okay, so let's save. And like before, we are going to get an error. So a tab bar needs a tab controller. So a tab controller tells the Flutter framework how the tab should be laid out on your screen. And you'll see what I mean in a second. We're going to surround our tab bar with a tab controller. And I'm actually going to put it around the entire scaffold here. So I'm going to use a default tab controller. So that's a subclass of the abstract tab controller class. We're going to say default tab controller. And you can see it takes in a length and a child. Very, very simple. So we're going to have two tabs here because we have two here. So our length is going to be 2. So we're going to have a length of 2 because we have two tabs. So let's say 2. And then for the child, it's just going to be the actual scaffold as a whole. Okay, so down here, let's put our parentheses. And now let's reload. And now you can see dependence is empty is not true. You can see after I restart it that now we get it. Sometimes just try restarting if you get an error like that. So now you can see that our tabs are at the bottom of our app bar. So this entire thing here is now considered the app bar. Okay, so now here we can switch tabs, but you can see that nothing is changing, right? So that is because we haven't set our tab views here. So doing that is actually pretty easy. We can go down to our body, and now instead of a center child text, hello world, we're going to have a tab view widget, or sorry, a tab bar view widget. So let's get rid of this. And down here, we're going to say tab bar view. And inside of here, this takes in a children prop. So we have children. And now I'm going to create a container. And for the container, I just want to create a color for each tab. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. So let's just say color. And for the color, I'm going to say colors dot deep purple. And then for the second tab, we're going to say container color colors dot, let's say red. Okay, and now we can reload. And now you can see we have purple. And now when we click on settings, we have red. So this is a very simple version of how you will create tabs in your app. What we have now is actually pretty simple. But now we're going to create a way for the Flutter framework to recognize that we're going up and down in our scroll view. And we want the UI to adjust from the app bar here. We want the app bar to kind of go up and down and maybe expand and contract as we scroll. So let's see how we can do that here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put the default tab controller inside of the scaffold. So I'm going to actually make that as part of the body. So let's get rid of this here. I'm going to return scaffold like before. And down in the body, I'm going to now put that here. Okay, and let's make this the child now. So this will be child. Okay, I didn't mean to change this here. So let's do tab bar view. Let's see if this works. And see, we get no tab controller for tab bar, right? That's because we have our tab view here, but we don't have our tabs there. So instead of the tab bar view, we're going to have something different here. So I'm actually going to take this and down here, actually up here, let's just create a separate function that returns the tab bar view. So we could say return, and we're going to create a function that says, let's do void and tab bar view build tab bar view. Oh yeah, we can't have void here, so let's get rid of that. So now we'll just keep it here for future reference. And now let's go down here. And instead of the tab bar view here, now I want to create a nested scroll view. So like I said before, I want the app to know, like, as we scroll up and down, I want the app bar to adjust based on the settings that I create for it. Okay, so down here in the child, now I want to create something called a nested scroll view. Okay, and we'll come back to this in a second. And up here, let's actually take the tab bar also. So we were getting that that tab controller issue because of this here. So let's create up here. Let's do tab bar because I want to use this later too. And we'll build tab bar. I like to keep stuff separate like this anyways in my widgets. So we'll go return, and then here, let's copy that, put it here, like so. And now I'm gonna get rid of the bottom here, like this. Okay, so now we just have our normal app bar here, and we'll change that in a bit. But first, let's go down here, and now, so we have our body default tab controller, the child of nested scroll view. So these nested scroll view, if you hover over this, it'll tell you a lot about what it does. It's down here. Creates a nested scroll view. We'll be using this soon. Okay, so it says must not be null. So these two specifically we'll be using. The header sliver builder will be our app bar. I'm not going to go too much into what slivers are, but just follow along and just remember that we're using a sliver builder, a header sliver builder with the nested scroll view. So down here, I'm going to say header sliver builder. And this takes in a couple of different things here, but we're not going to use either one of these. It takes in a context, and I think the second argument is a bool that tells it whether it should be scrolled or not. But regardless, we're not going to use that value. So we're just going to do a underscore here and a double underscore here to say that we're not going to use these actual values. Okay, and now for the body here, I want to return. So in the header sliver builder here, we need to create a list of widgets. Okay, so it'll be a widget, it'll be a type widget, and then we're going to have an array here. First, I'm going to add in something called a SliverAppbar. Okay, so for the SliverAppbar, you might want to read this here too. Creates a material design app bar that can be placed inside of a custom scroll view. So our nested scroll view is essentially a custom scroll view. Okay, so for the SliverAppbar, we're going to focus on the bottom part of it first. So we're going to say bottom, and then for the bottom, I'm actually going to put that tab bar into this. So similar to what we had up here in the normal app bar bottom, we're going to have our tab bar down here instead. So we have underscore build tab bar. And you can see here that we have an error. So we're missing the body. Okay. So similar to what we had before with the body, let's do comma. I think it would be down here. Okay. So we built our tab view up here, right? So now we're going to put our tab view down here. So we're going to say build tab bar view. We have a default controller of length 2 surrounding a nested scroll view. So now we'll be able to scroll instead of our widget here. And as we scroll up and down, we have a SliverAppbar that responds to that scrolling event here. But we haven't put any options in here yet. Let's see if this doesn't create an error. Okay, so now you can see our app looks pretty different now, right? We have our tab bar and tab bar view here. Okay, so let's see what happens when we do this now, up and down. Okay, so this is what we expect, right? We have a scroll view and we have a SliverAppbar as the header. So this header just scrolls along with the rest of the screen, okay? And that might be what you want, it might not be. So this works the same as before, right? But this doesn't look too good, right? That's not what you really want. So let's go back to the SliverAppbar. We have a ton of options in here that we can add to the SliverAppbar to customize how it looks and how it responds to scrolling events. So first, let's go down here to the pin option, pinned, And by default, I think it's false, yeah. So let's set it to true and see what happens. So let's do true, reload. And now when I try to scroll, it actually doesn't scroll. And you'll see why that's important in a little bit. So let's see what happens if I do another one called floating. So floating true. This should be false by default too. Okay. So this is whether the app or the app bar should become visible when the user scrolls towards the top. Okay, so let's reload. And now you can see it went up a little bit, right? So now when I scroll up, you can see that this is a bit different now, right? So it's a floating app bar. We pin it to the top and it also floats along with us. So that right there is actually a pretty big step into what we want for our app. So pinned keeps it at the top, floating makes sure that it's expandable, that it can go up and down. It kind of floats in the air, right? So let's go down here and now let's say snap. This might not work, but let's do snap true and snap. So snap and floating both have to be true. So it'll snap into view. So let's save, reload. So now we don't get much difference here, but let's change this to false. And you see that we get an error because it doesn't make sense for snap to be true on a non-floating app bar. That's just something that you have to remember. It's probably best if you just play around with this to get the behavior that you want to have. So let's say that we want the height to be a bit bigger for this too. Let's make this 300 as the height. So let's go down here and we'll say expanded height. So expanded height is the height that it is now before you scroll, right? So let's do expanded height and we'll make that 300. Let's reload. And now you can see we have a lot more space here. And now we can scroll up and down like before. Okay, and before I go any further, because this is a app bar by itself, I'm going to comment out the static app bar that we have here, or the stationary app bar that we have here. Okay, so let's go up here and I'm going to comment this out. So reload and restart. Okay, there we go. So now we have something that you might actually like in your app. So this could be a list view or any other scroll view, okay? So you go up and down and it stays here. And now we can go back and forth like this. So now I'm going to actually do a little bit of customizing with the colors and styling to match my Flutter Factory branding. So up here in the app bar, I'm going to say background color, then we're going to make it black. So colors.black. And we can also customize a lot of things with the tab bar itself. So up here in the tab bar, I want to make the indicators a little bit thicker. So up here, I'm going to say indicator weight, and then I'm going to say 5. And now you can see that the indicators are a lot thicker now. And I want to change the actual color too. So I'm going to say indicator color, colors.white for that. Okay. And now I want to change the actual color of the tab icons here. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say label color, colors.blue. So the entire thing is one label. And I'm also going to go down here and I'm going to say unselected label color. So this is the label color and the unselected label color is this here. So unselected, I'm going to make it a bit gray. It might be the same color as it is now. Not sure. So gray. Okay. Actually, we could do blue gray too. I don't know what that is here. Blue gray. Yeah, that's fine. Actually, let's do gray. Looks better. Yeah. Okay, so now we have our app bar with a floating tab bar like so, which is pretty cool. So now let's say that I wanted to actually have some stuff at the top here that you can see. So when it expands, I want to have it like before where we had a app bar up here with our tabs underneath it, right? So doing that is actually pretty easy. We can go down here to our app bar and give it a title. So we can say title, and then this will be a text widget, and then we'll say home here. Reload, and now you see we have home here. But as you can see, when we scroll up, that goes away. So that effect might be something that you want. It might be something that you don't want. We'll come back to that in a bit though. So down here, we can also add a image like before. So we can say leading image dot asset, and then we can pass in our images / logo dot png. And now we have that. And again, this goes away when you go up, which it is a cool effect, right? Like this is the default effect. It zooms in and out, and the home kind of fades in and out. So that effect is actually pretty cool. So let's see how changing these again will affect that behavior. So let's say false and snap false. So let's reload. Now let's scroll up. And now you can see that it comes up to the app bar, to the main app bar area, and then it just stays there, right? So that might be something that you want to do or not. It all depends on the design that you're trying to make, you know? If you want more space, then don't have these as false, put these as true, and you'll have more space up here at the top. But if you want to have your logo and your title visible all the time, then make these false, like they are now, okay? So now let's add a few actions here. So this is essentially an app bar, so we can still add our actions to it. So let's do actions, and then let's just copy our actions from up here, put it down here, and uncomment. And then you can see we have our actions up here too. So we have a nice little UI going on here. So there's one more important aspect of this SliverAppbar that I want to discuss, and that is this space here. So what is all this space here for, and can you add stuff to it? The answer is yes. And you do that with a parameter called FlexibleSpace. So after the actions, so let's put a comma here, and down here inside of the SliverAppbar, there's a field called FlexibleSpace. And if you hover over this, you'll see it's stacked behind the toolbar and the tab bar. Its height will be the same as the app bar's overall height. Okay, so this takes in a type of widget, right? Normally you would put in something called a flexible space widget. So FlexibleSpaceBar. And if you hover over this, you'll see that the part of the material design app bar that expands, collapses, and stretches, which is what you want to happen as you scroll up and down. So you would almost always use this widget with the flexible space field here. Okay, so inside of here, this takes in a few different values, but I'm going to focus on two things, and that is the background. So the background is whatever widget you'll see here, like as it goes up and down. Okay, so for the background, I'm just going to add our image logo here. So we're going to take this image line here and put it into here. Okay, and reload. And now you can see we have a giant Flutter Factory logo in here, right? So as we scroll up and down, it fades away, which is a very nice effect. So you might notice too that it's overlapping the top part of the app bar here and right here also. So what I like to do is create some padding around the widget here. So I always do padding, and then for here, the child is the image. And then for the padding, you would do edge insets, let's do edge insets, all. And then for, or actually, I don't want to do all. So I want to focus only on the vertical padding here. So let's do symmetrical is how you would do that, or symmetric. And then you would pass in the actual like either horizontal or vertical padding. So I'm going to say vertical. And then for vertical, I want to make the padding here equal to the height of the toolbar. So there's a built-in value that you can get. It's called the K toolbar height. So all the K values here are system field values that cannot be changed. Okay, so this is the default height of a toolbar in your app. So K toolbar height. And I put too many D's here. There we go. And this should be inside of here. Oh, that should be around there, like so. Okay. Think we are good. So let's reload. Come on here. Let's reload and see how this looks. Okay, so now you can see that the height has adjusted, or the padding has adjusted here based on the height of the app bar or the toolbar here. Okay, so now if we scroll up, it still overlaps, but it only overlaps as it goes up, which is fine. That's not a big deal. So depending on what you want to do with your design, you might want to adjust the paddings. You might want to adjust whether this is shown or not, etc. Okay. Another value here that you can put into the flexible spacebar is called the collapse mode. So the collapse mode, you can read here, the collapse effect while scrolling. So it affects how this behaves as you scroll up and down. So let's try a few different values. Let's say collapse mode. So there's 3 values. There's none, parallax, and pin. So if we do none, okay, so by default, actually, it's parallax. So parallax means that the foreground and the background scroll at different rates. So you can see I'm scrolling fast, but the actual background is moving slower than that. Okay, so that's a parallax effect. So if I do collapse mode dot none and reload, you can see now that it actually doesn't move at all. The background doesn't move. It still fades, but it doesn't move. So that might be what you want. It might not be what you want. And if I do dot pin, it behaves a bit differently. So it actually scrolls at the same rate as the scroll view. Okay. Personally, I don't really like that effect. It doesn't look very pleasing to me, but up to you. Okay, so I'm just going to leave it as parallax. So get rid of this here. And now it's parallax again. So yeah, I think that's all I'm going to talk about for this video. I might change the colors or the names of these tabs a bit, but for the most part, this will be how the general design looks for the home screen here. Okay, so I hope this video helps you get started with app bars and tabs for your UI. Stay tuned for the next video and happy coding. Bye.